Notebook LM, you were just telling me about it.
Yeah, well, I was just trying it myself for the first time. A friend of mine told me about it. This thing is going to go viral. Like, I put some of my source code in, and I pushed the button and made a podcast about it, and it was talking deep data science concepts, but at a level that I can't even explain it to my executives. And I'm going to learn from this. It's so good.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Right.
no, I just stuck in my documentation, and it's a project I've had in my mind for a while, and I've like done iterations on, but now I'm finally actually like knocking it out, and I have a full-fledged idea, and I have like basically a Word document that describes each component and the problem it solves. I stuck it in there, and like 3 minutes later, I got this.
Let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're going headfirst into this Awali project.
Interesting.
Yeah, we got there.
Right off the bat, a Wally, that's the name of my company, nailed it on pronunciation.
I know. I was expecting it to get it there. That's awesome.
I've yet to get a LLM to a voice LLM to say it correctly when I give it as a text input. I usually have to spell it out and then say it and then it gets it. But no, right off the bat, got it. It also read it though, so that could be a reason.
I gotta say, if you're having like a lull in your day and you need to pick me up, these podcasters make it sound so exciting. Whatever idea you've got, put it in there. They make it solid gold. But
It,
you have a great idea. We'll share it.
I don't know. One thing I want to try it on, when you've just been avoiding a project at work and there's like multiple text chains and it gets to a point where it's like they're asking you to say something. So I wonder if I can put that email chain in here. It tells me what's going on like a podcast, and I have enough information to respond, and it's not me going through and reading it.
That is so interesting. Yeah, put your whole email chain in, and then did you know? But in notebooklm, you can kind of give it a system prompt. When you say generate something, you don't have to tell it anything, and they just make it exciting. But if you want to put some sentences about like this is what you should focus on. So let's say you want to find the fallacy reasoning of why your coworkers are coming up with a bad idea. You might be able to put that in. I haven't heard him do that, but you might want to say like, tell me why bad or something, and have two podcasters going off and just shredding your idea or shredding an email chain. That's a possibility too. But right now, you just got it where you just put your documentation in and you hit play, and they're gonna hype it up.
That's awesome. Yeah, one thing that meeting transcripts, I love to analyze them with LLMs. One thing I did have a really good system prompt for finding fallacies.
How did it go? I mean, you taught me that, and I've been using it. Like, what's the something like what's the fallacies of my reasoning? What's the fallacies of their reasoning? I mean, if you're going to use AI like that, it's good to do both sides of the coin.
Yeah, so I actually didn't come up with the prompt myself. There's a guy, Daniel Mesler, I think. He has a project called Fabric, and it was the first time I ever seen this. The cool thing about Fabric is it has system prompts throughout the whole thing, and the concept is it brings AI to the terminal, so anyone who could use the terminal can use all these amazing AI tools. And the system, but what he did with all the system prompts is he actually crowdsourced the system prompts. So multiple people can go in and work on the prompt. Which is the first time I saw that and actually heard of it was in this project Fabric. And that's where I go whenever I'm just bored and I want to just read prompts. Or if I'm just like, oh, I know I kind of want to do something with this. Let's see if I have a boilerplate that I could go look at and then tweak where I need to. And one of them is Fallacy Finder. That's the system prompt.
So, like, yeah, I think you showed me once. Is it just a GitHub site or is it a website? Where do you get
It's a GitHub.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look it up now. And he has some amazing projects actually out. He recently released like an hour and a half video of like all his projects and how they form together. Dude's brilliant. Love to meet him one day.
I love it. So let's find his site real quick before we going to talk about notebooklm some more, and
Yeah, Fabric.
because there's like a wisdom prompt.
Daniel Mesler, Messler. Yeah, so if you go to his actual GitHub, he calls them patterns. And within the patterns, there's different folders. So there's a bunch of analyze stuff, compare, create.
So what's
He
his
has one. Go ahead.
so his GitHub project's literally called Fabric. You would like look up Fabric on GitHub.
Yeah, what I did is I Googled Fabric GitHub.
There you go.
Yeah, and he has a bunch of good stuff. He has one called Tweet. He has a lot of summarize. I'm trying to find the fallacy one just so I could read it. A couple cool things he has. One, the prompt structure is really good. How it goes input, output, train of thought. Like he breaks it out into sections, which that's where I learned it from. Sectioning out system prompts. And he has some things where it's like, take a breath and think about the problem step by step. And it's weird because you're like, why would I tell an LLM to take a breath? But one thing he talks about, and I've seen it to be true, if I talk to the LLM like it's a person, and I look at it as I'm training like an intern to do something for me, I'm gonna spell it out real simply. Take a breath, think about it step by step, and verbal brevity is key. Don't talk just to hear yourself talk. But all that sort of stuff does really well in system prompts versus like telling a system prompt to like only summarize it in 10 words. It kind of struggles with getting the 10 words, but if you're like verbal brevity, explain it simply. Don't talk just to listen to yourself talk. I've had a lot of good outputs with that.
You know,
Prompt.
I will say in real life, these prompts that I've been learning to tell the AI, they've been pretty good prompts to tell myself or coworkers or mentees.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I've gotten better with working with people now that I've been talking to AIs more, which is kind of weird.
What's another weird thing to think is when I'm just prompting off the cuff and I'm not using something sophisticated and regimented like what you're talking about, my mood will change how I write my prompt. And it's probably quite interesting if I start thinking that, like, getting impatient with the AI and call it a dumbass.
Yeah.
I think the answers probably get worse, and it's probably a non-virtuous cycle versus like sometimes it's a virtuous cycle.
There's been studies that show like um if you're polite to LLMs, they get lazy versus if you're brash and somewhat mean, they perform better.
Well, maybe I'm getting peak performance because my honeymoon period with AI tools is over. I love them. I still love them, but like I'm not always nice to them. I hope they're not learning.
Yeah, same. Same. So in the fallacy finder prompt, it says like you're a fallacy finder. All forms of human communication can contain fallacies. Because of their variety, fallacies are challenging to classify. You can be classified by their structure. And then it breaks down the structure of fallacies. It gives examples of each one. And then at the bottom, he goes, and when I say like goes examples of each one, it looks like he went to the wiki page of what is a fallacy and then just copied the entire summary and examples. I mean, it's massive. And then at the end, he has output instructions, which you're output in Markdown using each section header followed by the content section. And then the last, it says, do not complain about the input data. Just do the task. But it's like, it's a weird thing to put in a system prompt, but hey, it works. I haven't done any A/B testing of if I take it out, what happens. But it's an interesting thing to have in a system prompt. Like, don't complain about the data.
That is, I find these AI chat tools to be really helpful. Like if I've had a bad conversation with a friend or a partner or whatever, and I can't figure out what was bothering me about the conversation, sometimes I can put it in there and I can ask it to be honest about both sides of the conversation. That fallacy prompt would be incredible. And then sometimes I just feel better knowing that like I got my head around what was bothering me in the first place. And I can just move on. You know, you don't have to out with it. We're out.
It's it's funny you say that. So one of the first things I did when 4.0 came out with voice to voice, wow, my browser just died. Because I've been working. Are you familiar with nonviolent communication?
Yeah, and a lot of it I've learned from you when we
Yeah,
were um, um at the gun range together.
yeah. If you want to practice nonviolent communication, time you go to a gun range, gun show, like everyone there is typically nonviolent communication.
I mean,
Actual,
it's side, right? The 4.0 chat comes out and so you put the nonviolent
yeah.
communication in
So I
there.
was working on a system prompt that I can come to it with an issue, and it'll go through a conversation with me, and it'll show me how to respond with nonviolent communication. And I did it in the actual playground, which was pretty interesting. I'm trying to pull it up right now just because we could actually do it. Because the biggest breakthrough for me with 4.0 was the ability to interrupt. And the fact that
Yeah.
I could interrupt and then it would be able to deal with my interruptions and like stop, hear what I'm saying, and then like respond adequately was big for me.
Right. Yep. Do that. You want to talk about you? Yeah, we good on that. If you've got it.
Yeah, I'm actually realizing it's not saved in my playground like I thought it was. Looks like they redid their um
Did you lose
let's
your
get
prompt?
back on topic of the KLM.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy with any conversation, but yeah, we are excited about Notebook LM for sure, dude. And so you put in one of your all ideas that you've been working on, and we were just about to listen to how the podcast came from. Like, well, how much material did you put in to get whatever we're about to listen to?
So the material I put in was an overview document that I built with Chat GPT. It was, let me get the exact pages for you because I can do that. It was a total of 3 pages with headers and stuff. So not a lot, just like real high level concepts of problem, solution, and then just like how it works, the process of how it works. And
All
that's
right.
it. And it took me a while to get it that simplified and that quick. And when I say like I built it to be able to explain it to people and get it out of my head. That's
Mhm.
what I built this document for. And one of the things I struggle with is explaining it in a way that's one, entertaining, is super simple, and creates a lot of excitement around what I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
And that anyone can listen to who's not technical and can be happy about and be like, oh, wow, this is awesome. Because one of my things, it's like, I'm good with talking to business people to a degree. When it comes to here's like the nuts and bolts of doing something, I can talk to business people all day. I can talk to tech people all day. But as soon as you put me in like a marketing or sales sort of role, like it comes off like I view it as a waste of time because in some cases I do.
Yeah, I mean the gap is too great with technical knowledge and where they're at, and get impatient, or actually even if I'm being patient, I'm with you. Like I would have to, I would need to practice. I would have to put more in my side to practice to think about how to put it in their sales executive or marketing thing. And so I think we're about to hear out of this podcast now. If you play the podcast, if you click the beta mode instead of just starting to play your thing, if you click the beta mode right there, then you're going to get a screen that has a little bitty play button, and you start playing it from there, and also the join button.
Yeah.
So play it to get, and then if you want to interrupt them with a question to go deeper on something, hit that join button. and then it'll let you talk.
All right, let's kick it off.
And
Let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're going headfirst into this OLI project.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we got their documentation, and it looks like, they're swinging for the fences trying to build this system to manage like everything, company processes, data, knowledge, the whole 9 yards.
Ambitious.
For sure. And get this, they're talking about features that can like generate flowcharts straight from your meetings. And even like a chat interface to get instant answers. It's a lot to unpack. So let's dive in, see what OLI is all about.
Sounds pretty revolutionary trying to wrangle all that. I mean, everyone, hey, welcome. What's up?
Yeah, this sounds really interesting.
Okay, so it sounds like you're unsure about something, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, no problem at all. We're just getting started here, and
Still in
we
beta.
have to slow down.
Right, so maybe to make things clear, let's start at the very beginning. What problem is Elizalde trying to solve?
Good call, yeah.
See, now
We're talking about all these cool features, but what's the pain point? Why does-
what's funny is now that it's in beta mode, it's butchering a wallet.
yeah, it did it perfectly. Well, like, you know what? Let it play, but find a point and give it a question. I mean, you
Yeah.
and I were just talking, like, wait, this project is bigger than you thought. And then I was just saying, like, well, why not interrupt them after they've explained it a little bit? And then ask them, how could you simplify the whole thing? Or ask them, like, what would be like the killer product within this product, right? Stuff like that. Let's just where it
Yeah.
goes.
So when I hit join, it's not like I'm sitting there. It's expecting me to say something immediately.
Yeah, when you hit join, the button turns into this little audio thing, and you're speaking. And if you stop speaking for, say, 2 or 3 seconds, it will think that you're done speaking. That will get shipped off to the virtual podcast host, and they'll work you whatever you've asked into the conversation.
Got it. So it's not like I walked up to two people talking and I'm just sitting there listening and waiting to say something. It's like, no, I hit join and they're waiting for me to talk.
Yeah, if you hit join, it's like to that group of people, you raise your you go like, hey, I got an idea. I got a question.
exist?
You ever been in one of those meetings where, everyone walks out and everyone has a different idea of what was decided?
Yeah, happens all the time.
Right. So this first piece, AOI Flow, it's trying to fix that by recording the meeting and like as you're talking, it builds a flow chart visually.
Well, hold on. So, like, everyone's seeing this flow chart being built in real time.
Exactly. No more scribbling notes on a whiteboard. It's all right there, crystal clear.
That's wild. So everyone literally on the same page.
Yep. And then get this, once it's finalized, the flow chart gets stored in their knowledge base.
Okay, so that brings us to the next piece, the knowledge base.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're going after that age-old problem of finding that one crucial document.
Buried in a mountain of files.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's basically a one-stop shop for all the process stocks and operational knowledge.
And they emphasize that it's updated in real time.
You got it. Always the latest and greatest info.
That's going to be so valuable.
How do they maintain integrity in the knowledge base?
Okay, that's a really good question, and it's super important.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of a knowledge base if the info isn't trustworthy?
Right, so they don't go into crazy detail about it, but their documentation emphasizes that it's all about real-time updates.
And that's key because it means any changes are captured immediately, so you're not stuck with outdated info.
Okay, so that's one part of it, keeping it fresh.
But another big piece is the data cleaning process with AWALI data.
Oh, okay, so that makes sure that all the data that gets into the knowledge base is standardized, right?
Exactly. If it's consistent, it's more likely to be reliable.
That makes sense. And then also, I know they mentioned that they make sure the system uses checks and balances.
Right. So it's not just about putting it all in one place. It's also about making sure that.
So immediately I could already tell the documentation I gave it outdated. And it doesn't cover like key points where it's like, oh, I know how we're going to do it. I know how we maintain integrity. We do a group census. But it's like, oh, I guess I didn't put that in documentation.
Yeah, and I want to add to that point because I had added this documentation. Somebody at work wanted to know about a product I was working on and like give us some documentation. So I asked Aider to read my code, generate all the heuristic work. I asked it to record my thoughts on like the competitors, why I wouldn't or would use different pieces from them, open source projects and stuff like that. And I put all that in there. And I was listening to the podcast, and we did get to an area that the podcasters literally said, this topic is really thin. And I went back and looked and I was like, oh yeah. So just like you're discovering, it's kind of like a QA, a quality assurance check real quick to listen to this and play it back and realize they're right. I didn't do my part on that. And, you go back and edit source and redo it.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, it would be interesting to see. Immediately, I'm going back to like the email chains that I don't want to read, but I know I have to. Any documentation that seems just lame, like throw it in here, listen to a podcast about it. Have you run into like validity as far as hallucinations, or what are they talking about? The validity behind their words of, can I actually take what they said and run with it with like some degree of confidence?
Well, I don't have enough. I mean, I've only used it for a couple of days. I don't have enough experience. However, I will say this. Do not just put your stuff in about your software and then ship it off to your executive man. Give it a full listen, because in mine, I complicated part of my software and I didn't describe what I would do to contain that complication. And they literally said, this project could turn into a nightmare. They're like, I don't know. I mean, if not managed right, this project could be really complex. I was just like, okay, all right. I actually do not need my execs to hear that part of the podcast. But what I would do is I'd go back and augment what I gave it so that I know, put in what my plan is and tell it how it would stay manageable. You know what I mean? That's that piece of it. And then I would probably regenerate this podcast again if I got past that.
Yeah, that makes sense. In the chat in the middle, could you also add that information in the chat and then regenerate the podcast?
I think you go to your sources. Like, let's say I had three things. I would either go re-edit those sources or add additional information that, podcast AI bots, don't cover. And then I generate. And I think it throws away the old thing that it had and it looks at your new set of sources and it does it fresh again. I mean, you're rolling the dice, right? Each time it's probably not going to come out the same every time, but I don't know how much it varies. But I don't know. I have found it good as like a sounding board. Also, I think you could hand something like this to sales and marketing, and you could say, maybe it's not ready for external consumption, but within your company, it might help your salespeople understand your technical product better, right? Yeah. And it also can just for you real quick, but I think the podcast is more interactive and interesting for me. So, like, I feel like I could give this a mark because this podcast is very much a marketing spin on stuff, salesy marketing. This is perfect bridge, like between tech, product manager, and then like let's go over to sales and marketing, make them lots of ideas of what they could do with it, and let them interact and ask questions all day long about it. It'd be cool.
Yeah, that definitely seems. Yeah, man. As far as just a meeting primer, where it's like, here's the topic of the meeting. Listen to a podcast of the meeting and the agenda and all that stuff before you walk into the meeting. The likelihood of people listening to it and actually knowing what the meeting is going to be about seems to go, I would imagine, would be a lot higher.
I could also imagine me prepping, right? Getting me out of my technical introverted shell and like steeping myself in like how to communicate with the outside world, pump myself up. Like, I mean, I was a pre-sales engineer for a long while. I was a dude who went along with the sales guy and I would give the presentation and click through the software and have to set it all up ahead of time. If I had this, I would have been on fire and like warmed up a lot more than the process I had to go through to get my head in the right spot. It was kind of a hard process for me.
100%. I relate to that a lot.
But I want to hear some more Wally product. I want to hear, and I want you to ask him like, what is the simplest part of this project you should start with, or something like that, because you were asking me that, and I was like, ask them that.
Data is and
Yeah.
consistent. But we're going to dig into that in a bit.
So that's kind of how they keep things accurate.
Yeah, but there are other concerns about access and privacy.
We'll be sure to explore that too.
Anyway, so like we were saying, most companies got tons of data, but actually using it, making sense of it, that's the tricky part.
Oh, yeah, data overload
So here comes OI data. It grabs data from all over the company,
from everywhere.
pretty much cleans it up, standardizes it, so everyone's working with the same definitions.
I see. Makes it all like coherent.
Right. And they even have this thing, a data dictionary.
A data dictionary. What is that?
It's like a roadmap for your data.
What's up?
Can't see your page. You're off screen.
Sorry.
First thing where it gets
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm in widescreen. I can see it.
Find all the terms and variables so everyone's on the same page.
So it's like not just having the data, but making it understandable.
Yeah, you got it. Turning it into something usable so you can actually pull insights from it.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they don't stop there. With AOLI data, you can build custom reports, spreadsheets, dashboards, the works.
Wow. So they're giving everyone the tools to be a data analyst.
Yeah, pretty much. Powering people, that's the key.
That's huge. All right. So we've got streamlined processes, organized knowledge, data wrangled into submission. What else?
Well, think about this. You need information right now, and you don't want to go on a scavenger hunt.
Oh, I feel that.
So they have a Wally chat.
A chat, really?
Yep. You can just ask questions about processes, data, reports, anything in plain English.
Like literally just type in a question.
Exactly. And it's connected to the knowledge base and LA data, so it pulls the answers straight from there.
It's like having like a company encyclopedia that talks back to you.
Pretty much. Real-time answers whenever you need them.
Wow. So much faster than digging through files or hoping someone gets back to your email.
Right. Changes the whole game.
This is seriously impressive. But yeah, having all this information in one place, it makes me think about the potential downsides too.
Of course. That's a whole other conversation.
Exactly. Something to dig into.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the downsides?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's definitely something we need to talk about.
I mean, with any system this complex, there are bound to be some challenges.
Right. So I guess the obvious one is like having all this info in one place. What could go wrong?
Well, the first thing that pops in my head is, access control.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, if AOI have all this sensitive data, they got to be really careful about who can see what.
Yeah. It's like the keys to the kingdom, right?
Exactly. You don't want just anyone wandering around in there.
So how do they make sure the right people have the right access?
They talk about role-based permissions in their docs.
Oh, okay.
So basically, your access depends on your job, like we were mentioning earlier.
I honestly forgot that was in there.
So like someone in marketing can't see the financial stuff.
Right, exactly. It keeps things separated, need to know basis.
Checks and balances. I like it.
But even then, there's always the risk of like a data breach, right?
That's true. No system's perfect.
So that's why encryption is so important.
Right. To keep the data safe.
Both the data moving around inside the system and the data just sitting there in their servers got to be locked down.
Encryption. That's where they like scramble the data so no one can read it without the key, right?
You got it.
Back to our listener.
Does a Wally talk about encryption?
Okay, so that's a funny way to put it.
Right, but I think I see what you mean. You're saying that like the documentation doesn't get into the details about encryption.
Yeah, you're right. They don't really get into the technical nitty-gritty there. Kind of touch on it.
Which is kind of odd because it's so important to data security.
Yeah, you'd expect them to.
Yeah, so it just went off on this tangent where it's just like, I've specifically not talked about that in the documentation. But we do on-prem stuff typically. But it was one of those like, we're getting into something that I haven't touched with a 10-foot pole in documentation. Because typically you don't talk about that sort of stuff in documentation.
You got gaps, man. You got gaps. Hey, so ask them how to. Here, I don't know if I'm going to come across. I want to know like what's the most killer part of this idea, and if you could only do like a small part of this whole idea, where to start.
Like really emphasize that kind of. Yeah.
So what's the coolest part of this idea? And if I could only do one piece, where should I start?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of what makes a walleye interesting.
Yeah, you're right. It's like if you had to pick just one, where do you get the most bang for your buck?
Well, if I had to pick the coolest part, I'd say ALI flow is where it's at.
Really, the flowchart part. I thought you were going to say the data stuff.
Okay, hear me out. The data stuff is vital, but AOI flow is, I think, the most immediately impactful.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Think about it. Every company struggles with aligning on how things actually work. A well-eye flow gives you a visual, real-time tool to like literally get everyone on the same page.
Okay, I see what you mean. You can see the process as it's being discussed.
Exactly. And that solves such a common problem. It's like this missing link between talking about a process and actually implementing it.
So it's like a direct, practical application of what they're trying to do.
Exactly. And it's the starting point. It's how the information gets into the system.
So if you're choosing only one piece, the flowchart part helps with everything else.
Exactly.
That's crazy because that's exactly like where I've started and nailed it. And it talked about it in a way that was, I found very palatable and easy to consume. And also like hyped it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these voices are still fresh to me, maybe after the 20th time of listening to these two talk, but still, I find it interesting. But hopefully Google will at least just get more voices. So if I just feel like a different voice, that would be fresh.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, like, how many people tune into the same podcast from the same people over and over and over again, just on the latest new thing?
I mean, it's true. No, I mean, I think I can get by with these two voices. I think they're good voices. I think they're good. I'd love to have our voices custom in it, make it interesting.
Would be awesome.
Really
Then the
love
question becomes, what content is actually us? We're actually Notebook LM right now.
just with talking heads put onto it. Yeah, dude. Well, I'm glad you're having fun with it. But I don't know. It's like looking into a mirror, and it's like prepping for things, and it's like learning to talk, and like I think this is a very very useful tool that's going to go big fast. I'm almost thinking about like my Google Doc. Like I was watching, thinking this last year, like, Google's going to die because who's on Google anymore? It's like their model seems like it's going to go away, and AI can summarize stuff where I can avoid that, stuff like that. Not a good product. Still not a good product company, but like they're doing kind of interesting to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it. One thing that I see automatically is it changed content in the sense of like, now I no longer remember WebSim.
Yeah,
So WebSim AI paired with this, where it's like I Google content and then it just like simulates a whole podcast based off what I want, or if I want a podcast of just my own knowledge base that I've accrued. Like the idea of like I could go into a perplexity conversation, I could get that entire thread and be able to give that to Notebook LM, and it goes to all the sources and everything, and then has a podcast about it, and it cites it. That would be an incredible product.
that would be. And just to remind everybody, websim.ai is where you just type in a small prompt of what you want your website to be, and it creates an entire website with that software with the UI in a matter of minutes. And on the fly, as you click things on that web page that it invented for you, that then becomes a prompt on the fly. And so as you navigate the web, then website is creating it in real time as you go. It's so much like Inception. It's so weird. You and I, search engine, right? And just went with it. Like a lot of people just make searches. Like you're an expert on stock market analysis, and you have a stock ticker, and you have the hottest picks, and suddenly you have this web engine that really is looking at real data, pulls it in for you to an imaginary website, and then you say, and you found the top 5 hidden stocks of the world, and like you start doing all this stuff, and it's really whatever you just say as you dream. That's what you were referring to, right?
Yep, 100%.
So how would you put that with your Perplexity AI search, which is knowledge cited? What would you? How would you?
Well, so here's what I was thinking. So Perplexity, one thing that they've done really well, and well, I wouldn't say they've done it really well yet. Where I see them going is the ability to build your own knowledge bases based off Perplexity searches. So they're in this weird spot where it's like, they say you ask a question and we give answers. That's how we're different than Google. We provide the answer. And then it cites its sources and then it has follow-up questions below, right? Pretty cool. In my mind, we've talked about a deep search with like a tree where it's like I have my initial question, it does the Perplexity search, it has the response, all the sources, and then the follow-up questions. So then it's like, okay, go down the follow-up questions. Now you're on the second level, and now you have 3 follow-up questions, gets all the sources and everything. Do that like 2 or 3 levels, create your knowledge tree, and then be able to, Perplexity as an AI, API, and it's an AI company. They have an API and they finally released their sources. So now in the API call, you could get the sources back. So you could scrape those websites. So if you, from a back end, going back to your build question, you automate like the pulling the response, scraping the websites, putting those in like markdown files, and then doing the like 3 trees down of the follow-up questions it recommends, packaging that up as one, automatically shipping that to notebooklm, and creating a podcast off that. That would be an interesting tool where it's like I'd sit there and I'd go, me and my buddy literally did this. What would it take to start a camel ranch in West Texas? Because we're like, okay, West Texas doesn't have a lot of water, land's cheap. What could you ranch out there? We're like, camels. Because my buddy, he spent a lot of time in Africa and camel milk and camel meat's really popular there. So I was like, oh, he's like, why don't we do that here? But it's like now I can talk about camel ranching in Texas as my topic. It automatically build a robust knowledge base with Perplexity and then shoot it to create a podcast on it. So then I could learn about it in a fun way that's not me reading and data mining. That's a cool tool, dude.
I'm glad you're having fun learning about milk and camels.
Yeah, but it was one of those things where it's like, you show me a podcast about camel ranching in Texas.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's true. And it seems like it's a waste that you would do all those searches in Perplexity, and they're kind of temporal, and they kind of just sit in your chat. And it's like, really, if you were on that topic, that should be enough to be like its own knowledge base. And you paid for your pro search, use up all your money and AI credits to build it. You would have the most knowledgeable camel ranch knowledge base that anybody's got. And it'd be interesting if the human could go and fix parts of that knowledge base too, not just accept it. But then you start talking to a rancher, and he's like, "Hold on, you've got one part all wrong," and you go and you fix. Then by then you have your own branded knowledge base that's only yours.
Yeah. And it's happened really quickly. And you could even automate like the fact checking and stuff. The checks and balances is really what it boils down to get like rich, real data on. Once you create the knowledge base, you just run something over it to be like, fact check all this stuff. And thanks to Perplexity sources, like it's somewhat fact checked. And then you just find someone based on the sources, contact those people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's just, to me, I think we're going to enter an age, like, if you do have a local expert that can augment a thing like that, or you could go contact the people, you're going to be trying to sort out, like, is it bullshit or camel shit? And it's just like AI feeding on itself, and it's all a bunch of hype, or it's good knowledge that's auto-generated, and then you're going to be looking for those gritty, real people, right, in the real world. And then like real people are going to be craving YouTube that aren't all the AI generated stuff really badly,
Well, it gets to the underlying thing where it's like the underlying hot topic with AI is like, is it going to replace us? Is it going to replace whatever? Jobs, human connection, all that. And like my philosophy on it is any AI tool I use or build, I want an AI tool that automates human connection. Where it's like, in this way, it's like, okay, does Perplexity teach me enough so I'll have the confidence to call that camel rancher and not be, and just have the confidence to make the call? Because for me, it's like, I want to know a little bit going in.
Yeah.
And my shame level is pretty low. Like, look like the village idiot in the pursuit of knowledge and curiosity. But at the same time, I'm not going to call a camel rancher and be like, hey, man, think about starting one until I've done sufficient research, you know? So it's like, how can I get to a point where I've learned enough where I could go with my head held high?
Yeah. I mean, like if you can go in, your time's going to be more productive. Like immediately you'll probably get a little more credibility. You might make a deeper connection and actually start talking about something that's real, and you're not just your confidence, but maybe that person's confidence in you suit up. And that could be a much better time. I could see that.
Yeah.
Man, camel ranching in Texas, that does make sense. What does camel milk and camel cheese and camel meat taste like? I don't know.
I don't know, but there's one ranch that is somewhere north, and they also do like a petting zoo type thing.
My brain's finding it kind of sad to think about petting zoo, and then you like kill the camel for the meat. You know what I mean? I'm having a hard time with that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely that aspect of it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say to that, honestly.
I think you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah, have you ever seen the show The Office? Yeah, there was one episode where Dwight's like, I finally figured out the 3/4 horse burger, where it's like, I can take out a full burger patty without killing the horse. Just like, immediately, I'm like, how big's the camel hump? How much does it really need? That's mostly fat, though, so.
Yeah, let's go down the route if you're going to raise these like you would cattle and, eventually slaughter and eat them for the meat, which, I love cattle. I love my brisket. So I'm just wondering what the brisket portion of the meat of the camel would taste like on a smoker. You know what I mean? That could be pretty good. I don't know.
I mean, Andrew, my buddy who told me about camel meat to begin with, he says it tastes good. It's real fatty, depending on where you get the meat on the camel.
What kind of fatty? Like A5 Wagyu
No,
Japanese
like
fatty or
lumps of fat places, otherwise like pretty lean.
that's a little bit more like lamb or goat, honestly. There's this one barbecue place in Austin, and it's kind of next to the you don't need to eat my beef
Yeah,
place.
Sam's Barbecue.
Yeah, but it's a little up the road from that on the east side. And they, I think they cook goat. They barbecue goat, and it's so fat. Like you get it, it's like so rich and fatty. It's a little much, but good. So I'm just kind of thinking, I wonder if we're talking like that for camel.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But one thing you could also do instead of slaughter them, you could race them. Camel racing's massive in the Middle East.
Well, there you go. That's more of your humanitarian bent. I mean, you can get the milk.
It depends on how you start. Do you have live riders or not? So camel racing, some history. Originally, they had children riders. And there's just because of the sheer amount of like accidents. They've now invented camel racing robots that they strap on the camels, and it's just like a drill with a whip, and it just constantly is whipping the camel to run faster. Not like a whip, like you know how jockeys and horses.
Yeah, you're not trying to hurt the camel's hide, but you're trying to like say, hey, keep going, pat, pat, go,
Yeah,
go.
yeah. It's like a horse jockey.
Yeah, no, I get it. It sounds kind of inhumane when you say this thrilled,
Yeah, no,
but
as I was explaining it, I was like, I'm not doing it justice, but this is literally how it works.
there's a lot of people on the internet thinking, just kill the camel and eat the camel, David.
Yeah. Instead of race them,